We mocked the human challenger, right up until she stepped into the arena. 3 minutes later, our undefeated champion was unconscious and our entire galaxy was terrified. I have been doing this job for 17 cycles now, and I have seen some absolutely ridiculous things in my time as the primary commentator for the Galactic Combat Championships. I have watched a Crenarian tear through solid titanium plating with nothing but his mandibles. I have seen a Valkorian priestess redirect kinetic rounds using what she claimed was pure meditation, though I suspect there was some telekinetic cheating involved. I have even witnessed, may the ancestors forgive me, the legendary match where Thorax the Unbreakable fought for 6 straight hours without taking a single breath. That was mostly boring, if I am being honest, but impressive nonetheless. But nothing, and I mean nothing, could have prepared me for what I am about to tell you. My name is Zelthar, second clutch of the Margoni diplomatic course, and before I took this commentary position, I spent 12 years as a xenobiological analyst for the Galactic Council. So when I tell you that what happened at Station Meridian 7 last rotation changed everything we thought we knew about the galaxy, you need to understand that I am not being dramatic. Well, maybe a little dramatic. It is literally my job to be dramatic, but this time the drama is actually warranted. Station Meridian 7, for those of you who do not follow the combat sports circuit, is the crown jewel of competitive violence in our corner of the galaxy. The station orbits a dead world in neutral space, specifically chosen because no single government could claim jurisdiction and interfere with the matches. The arena itself is a marvel of engineering, 200 meters in diameter, surrounded by energy shields capable of containing a small nuclear detonation, with seating for 50,000 spectators from every major species in the known galaxy. The floor is made from compressed carbon ceramic composite that can withstand pretty much anything short of antimatter, and even then we have backups. The Galactic Combat Championships happen twice a cycle, and they are exactly what they sound like. Warriors, mercenaries, soldiers, and various violent individuals from across known space come to prove who is the strongest, the fastest, the most deadly. There are rules, of course. No weapons above Class 4 energy output. No biochemical agents, no temporal manipulation, because we tried that once and it got really confusing really fast. But other than that, anything goes. You win by knockout, submission, or when your opponent can no longer continue. Simple, brutal, extremely popular. The prize? 10 million credits. A championship belt made from auric crystal, and more importantly bragging rights, that extend across 300 colonized systems. Winning the championships means job offers from every military contractor in the galaxy, endorsement deals, and the kind of respect that opens doors even in the most exclusive establishments. It is a big deal is what I am saying. Now, our reigning champion at this particular tournament was a walking nightmare named Kravik the Destroyer. Yes, he actually went by that name. No, it was not ironic. Kravik was a Thraxian, which for those not familiar with that particular species, means he stood roughly 4 meters tall, possessed 4 arms, each capable of lifting half a ton, and had bone plating thick enough to stop armor-piercing rounds. His skin was a dark purple that looked almost black under the arena lights, and his eyes glowed this unsettling orange color that made you instinctively want to run in the opposite direction. Kravik had held the championship for 3 consecutive tournaments. He had defeated 47 challengers during that time. 17 of those challengers were still in medical rehabilitation. His record was flawless, his technique was brutal, and his personality made him very, very easy to root against, which only made the crowds love him more. Combat sports fans are weird like that. Before Kravik, the title had been held by a Korthaxi named Grimshade, who won 2 tournaments before retiring due to severe neural damage. Before that, a human, no wait, that is not right, a Herlathi named Vengeancebringer, who held it for 1 tournament before Grimshade literally ripped his secondary arms off. Good times. So there I was, sitting in my commentary booth reviewing the tournament brackets, preparing my usual mix of technical analysis and sarcastic observations, when the announcement hit the feeds. A new challenger had registered. Species: human. Name: Captain Elena Vasquez. Origin: Earth Sol System, Orion Arm. The production crew actually started laughing. Not with me, just spontaneously laughing. Now I should mention that humans were relatively new to the galactic community. They had made first contact maybe 8 cycles ago, and their integration had been, how do I put this politely, underwhelming. They were classified as a Class C species, which is diplomatic speak for not particularly impressive. Their technology was decent but nothing groundbreaking. Their ships were functional but slow. Their diplomats were friendly but kept to themselves mostly. They had not made any significant impact on galactic politics, economics, or culture. They were just kind of there, existing quietly in their little corner of the Orion Arm. The general assessment was that Earth was a low-gravity world, Based on preliminary scans and the fact that humans seemed kind of fragile compared to most spacefaring species, they did not have natural armor, they did not have redundant organs, they did not have enhanced senses or any obvious physical advantages. They were just these soft pink or brown or various shades in between bipeds, who seemed perpetually surprised that the galaxy was so dangerous. So when the announcement came that a human had entered the championships, the reaction was pretty much universal mockery. The betting markets, which normally took every challenger seriously because upsets make for great drama, set Elena Vasquez's odds at 5,000 to 1 again. That is not a typo. 5,000 to 1. You could bet 1 credit and potentially win 5,000 if she managed to win even a single match. Most bookies were not even bothering to take bets because they assumed it was free money. I pulled up her registration file. Captain Elena Vasquez, 34 standard years old, former cargo pilot for the Human Colonial Transport Service. No formal military training listed, no previous combat sports experience. Her medical scan showed she was in excellent health for a human, but that meant absolutely nothing when compared to someone like Kravik. She stood approximately 1.7 meters tall. She weighed maybe 70 kilograms. She had dark hair pulled back in a practical bun, brown eyes that seemed almost bored in her registration photo, and absolutely nothing about her suggested she belonged anywhere near a combat arena. The brackets put her in a preliminary match against a mid-tier Vorlaxian named Crusher. Even that seemed almost cruel. Crusher was not championship material, but he was solid, experienced, and outweighed Elena by at least 200 kilograms. The betting odds on that specific match were not even being calculated. It was considered a foregone conclusion. I finished my prep work, made a note to keep the commentary light on the Vasquez match because it would probably be over in under 30 seconds, and headed down to the arena floor to do some pre-tournament interviews. This was going to be, I thought, a perfectly normal championship cycle. I had no idea how wrong I was. The thing about galactic intelligence classifications is that they are only as good as the data you collect, and apparently, nobody had bothered to collect very good data about Earth. The initial survey team had done a flyby scan, noted the gravity at 0.9 standard, saw that humans did not have any obvious biological weapons or natural defenses, and basically filed them under not a threat, possibly useful for trade, standard procedure for Class C species. What nobody had apparently considered, and this still baffles me, is that maybe, just maybe, you should do more than a surface scan before making assumptions. But no, we had centuries of protocol and classification systems, and they had never steered us wrong before, so why start questioning them now? I am being sarcastic in case that was not clear. I am very good at sarcasm. The assumption was simple. Low gravity world equals weak species. It was basic evolutionary logic. Species adapt to their environment. Lighter gravity means less resistance, which means less muscle development, which means physically inferior specimens. We had dozens of examples across the galaxy that supported this theory. The Phylexians from their 0.6 gravity homeworld could barely function in standard gravity without assistance. The Tremori needed exoskeletons just to walk around most stations. It made perfect sense. Except, as it turned out, Earth was not a low-gravity world. But I am getting ahead of myself. I made my way down to the preparation rooms about an hour before the tournament started. These rooms were basically reinforced cells where the fighters could warm up, mentally prepare, and occasionally trash-talk each other through the walls. The rooms were monitored, of course, because we had learned the hard way that some species considered pre-fight assassinations to be a legitimate strategy. Elena Vasquez was in room 7. I pulled up the camera feed on my datapad, expecting to see her panicking, praying to whatever gods humans believed in, or maybe trying to figure out how to forfeit without losing too much dignity. Instead, she was doing push-ups, just regular push-ups, in full standard gravity like it was nothing. She had been at it for 20 minutes, and she was not even breathing hard. I counted. She did 500 before she stopped, stood up, rolled her shoulders, and took a sip of water. Her expression was calm. Not fearless exactly. More like someone waiting for a shuttle that was running slightly late, mildly inconvenienced at worst. In the next room over, Crusher was smashing his fists against a practice dummy, roaring about how he was going to rip the tiny human apart. In room 12, Kravik was sitting in meditation, which somehow seemed more terrifying than if he had been raging. In room 3, a Skarothi fighter named Fang was literally sharpening her claws on a grinding stone. Everyone was preparing in their own way. And then there was Elena just standing there, stretching her neck from side to side like she was about to sit down for a boring office job. The other fighters had noticed the human, of course. Word spreads fast in the prep area. I watched on the monitors as Crusher banged on the wall separating his room from Elena's. His translator picked up his words clearly. "Hey, human. I promise to make it quick. Nothing personal, but you really should not be here. Elena did not respond, she just continued her stretching routine. Another fighter, a Drakthar named Razorwind, was making jokes in the common area. I heard his translator chime in over the general frequency. I heard the human is so weak, the medical team is standing by with a body bag instead of a stretcher. The other fighters laughed. It was mean. Sure, but combat sports were not exactly known for good sportsmanship. Meanwhile, the arena was filling up fast. The seats were arranged in ascending tiers, each section designated for different species based on their atmospheric and gravitational needs. The methane breathers got their sealed section on the upper east side. The high-gravity species had their reinforced platforms on the lower west. Everyone else filled in between. By the time I made it back to my commentary booth, we were at 92% capacity. 46,000 beings from 63 different species, all here to watch violence and eat overpriced station food. The arena floor gleamed under the massive overhead lights. The energy shields hummed at the edges, creating a faint blue shimmer that marked the boundary of the combat zone. Medical teams were stationed at 4 equidistant points around the perimeter, their emergency equipment ready for the inevitable injuries. We had never had a death in the arena, mostly because the medical technology available could bring someone back from almost anything short of complete disintegration, but we had come close a few times. The referee for the championship bracket was a Valdorian named Strictlaw. Yes, that was actually his name. The Valdorians were a species that took rules very, very seriously, which made them perfect for this job. Strictlaw stood 3 meters tall, had 6 eyes that could track multiple fighters simultaneously, and possessed a voice amplifier that could cut through even the loudest crowd noise. He floated into the center of the arena on his gravity platform, and the crowd noise immediately dropped to a murmur. The rules are simple, Strictlaw announced, his voice booming through every speaker in the station. No lethal force, no attacks after submission, no interference from outside parties, victory by knockout, submission, or referee stoppage. Matches continue until one fighter cannot or will not continue. Medical teams will extract any seriously injured participants immediately. Any violation of these rules results in immediate disqualification and potential criminal charges. Are there any questions? There were never any questions. Everyone knew the rules. First match, Strictlaw continued. Kravik the Destroyer versus Fenris the Stormborn. The crowd absolutely erupted. This was the fight everyone wanted to see. Kravik's entrance was, as always, a masterpiece of theatrical intimidation. The lights dimmed. Smoke machines pumped vapor across the arena floor. Pyrotechnics exploded in sequence, creating a pathway of fire. And then Kravik himself emerged. All 4 arms raised, his orange eyes blazing, his bone-plated chest heaving with each breath. He roared, and the sound system amplified it until the entire station seemed to shake. The crowd roared back. They loved him, they hated him, but either way they could not look away. Fenris the Stormborn put up a decent fight. He lasted almost 3 minutes before Kravik caught him with a combination strike that sent him crashing into the energy barrier. The medical team rushed in, confirmed Fenris was unconscious but stable, and carried him out on a hover stretcher. Kravik barely looked winded. 3 more matches followed, each one brutal, each one entertaining. The crowd was getting their money's worth. And then, finally, it was time for the match everyone was secretly waiting for, even if they would not admit it. The mismatch of the century. The joke fight. In the challenger corner, Strictlaw announced, weighing 71 kilograms with a record of 0 wins and 0 losses representing Earth and the human species, Captain Elena Vasquez. Elena walked out of the tunnel entrance like she was heading to a briefing. No pyrotechnics, no dramatic music. She wore simple gray combat fatigues, standard issue boots, and had her hair tied back in that same practical bun. She did not wave to the crowd. She did not pose. She just walked to her corner, rolled her shoulders once, and waited. The crowd did not know how to react. Some laughed, some booed, not because they disliked her, but because the whole thing seemed absurd. Some actually cheered, probably because they appreciated the sheer audacity of a human entering the championships. In the champion corner, Strictlaw continued, weighing 430 kilograms with a record of 47 wins and 0 losses, the reigning galactic combat champion Kravik the Destroyer. Kravik's second entrance was somehow even more dramatic than his first. He was playing to the crowd now, knowing this match was going to be quick and he wanted to make it memorable. He flexed all 4 arms. He beat his chest. He pointed at Elena, and made a throat-cutting gesture that was universal across pretty much every species. Elena just stood there watching him with that same calm expression. They approached the center of the arena. The size difference was actually comical. Kravik towered over Elena by more than 2 meters. His smallest arm was thicker than her entire torso. Standing next to him, she looked like a child who had wandered into the wrong area. I leaned into my commentary microphone. Ladies, gentlemen, and beings of all configurations, I give this match approximately 15 seconds. Maybe 20 if the human is particularly good at running away. I have seen training dummies that would put up a better fight. This is either going to be the shortest match in championship history, or the most embarrassing. Possibly both. The crowd laughed. Even Stricklaw's mandibles twitched in what might have been amusement. Fighters ready? Stricklaw asked. Kravik roared his acknowledgement. Elena simply nodded. Begin. And that is when everything I thought I knew about the galaxy turned out to be catastrophically, hilariously, terrifyingly wrong. Kravik did not waste any time with posturing or strategy. The moment Stricklaw signaled the start, he charged. And when I say charged, I mean he launched himself forward with the kind of speed that should not be possible for something that massive. 430 kilograms of bone, muscle and bad intentions, moving like a freight shuttle with the brakes cut, his forearms spread wide, ready to grab, crush or pulverize whatever got in their way. I had seen this move before. It was Kravik's standard opening. Close the distance immediately. Use his superior size and strength to overwhelm his opponent before they could establish any kind of defensive strategy. It had worked 47 times in a row. There was absolutely no reason to think it would not work again. Elena moved. Not backward, which would have been the smart thing to do. Not to the side, which would have bought her maybe 2 extra seconds. She moved forward, ducking under Kravik's outstretched arms and sliding past him with a speed that made my eyes hurt trying to track it. One moment she was directly in front of him. The next she was 3 meters behind him, turning to face his back. The crowd made a collective sound of surprise. So did I, if I am being honest. Okay, I said into my microphone, keeping my voice steady despite my confusion. That was lucky. Pure luck. Caught him off guard. It will not work twice. Except it did work twice. And then 3 times and then 4. Kravik spun around, roaring in frustration, and threw a combination punch that would have shattered reinforced concrete. Elena swayed backward, and I swear by my ancestors the first punch missed her face by maybe 2 centimeters. The second punch missed by even less. The third punch hit nothing but air because she had already ducked and moved again. She was not running away, which would have made sense. She was just staying exactly out of reach, moving with this smooth, efficient grace that made it look almost choreographed. Impossible, I muttered, forgetting my microphone was live. She should not be that fast. Humans are not that fast. Kravik thought the same thing apparently. His orange eyes were narrowing, his movements becoming more calculated. He stopped charging recklessly and started herding her toward the edge of the arena, cutting off her escape routes. Smart fighter. Our champion. Brutal, but not stupid. He reached for his equipment belt and drew his kinetic hammers, one in each of his upper arms. These were Class 3 weapons, perfectly legal under tournament rules. Essentially handles attached to gravitational field generators that could increase their impact force by a factor of 10. Kravik had used them to crack Adrenathi's shell armor in a previous match. The sound of that impact still gave me nightmares. He swung both hammers in a crossing pattern, too fast for most beings to even perceive. Elena dropped flat to the arena floor, letting both weapons pass over her, then rolled sideways as Kravik brought them down in an overhead smash that left a crater in the carbon ceramic surface. That should not have been possible either, by the way. That floor was rated to withstand impacts up to Class 5 energy output. Kravik had exceeded the manufacturer's specifications, and nobody seemed concerned except the station maintenance crew. The crowd was starting to make different sounds now. The laughter had stopped. The boos had turned into confused murmurs. People in the stands were leaning forward, trying to figure out what they were watching. This was not going according to script. The human was supposed to be broken and bleeding by now, not dancing around like she had been doing this her entire life. Elena still had not thrown a single punch. She had not attempted any kind of offensive move at all. She was just dodging, weaving, staying mobile. Her expression had not changed. She looked focused. Sure, but not scared. Not even slightly worried. It was like she was studying him, learning his patterns, treating this like a training exercise rather than a fight for her life. Kravik was breathing harder now, which was unusual. His species had incredible stamina, but he had been throwing full power strikes for almost 2 minutes straight and every single one had missed. That takes a toll both physically and mentally. I could see his frustration building, see him getting angrier with each missed attack. Enough, he roared, dropping his hammers and reaching for his gauntlets. Oh no. Oh, this was bad. The crowd recognized what he was doing, and the noise level jumped immediately. Half the audience was cheering. The other half was shouting concerns to Stricklaw, who was watching carefully but not interfering. Technically, plasma gauntlets were Class 4 weapons, which put them right at the upper limit of what was allowed. Kravik activated them, and both gauntlets began glowing with that distinctive blue-white plasma energy. These were his signature weapons, the tools that had won him his championship. The gauntlets worked by generating contained plasma fields around his fists, superheating the air to temperatures that could melt through most known materials. More importantly, they could project that plasma as a ranged attack, a bolt of pure energy, traveling at near light speed, with enough force to punch through armor plating. This attack had never been blocked. Not once. Not ever. The best any fighter had managed was to dodge, and even then the radiant heat alone had caused severe burns. 2 fighters had been killed by this attack in unofficial matches before the championships implemented their medical protocols. It was devastating. It was terrifying, and Kravik knew it. He squared up, planting his feet, and began charging the gauntlets to full power. The blue-white glow intensified, becoming almost painful to look at. Arcs of plasma energy danced between his fingers. The air around him shimmered with heat distortion. The energy shields at the edge of the arena automatically reinforced themselves, recognizing the threat level. Elena finally stopped moving. She stood still, watching him charge up, and for the first time since the match started, she shifted her stance. Nothing dramatic. She just planted her feet shoulder-width apart and raised her right hand, palm out, like she was telling him to stop. Kravik grinned, showing all his teeth. Big mistake, little human. He thrust both arms forward, and the plasma gauntlets released their stored energy in a focused blast, twin bolts of superheated plasma, converging on Elena's center mass, moving so fast that they were barely visible as anything other than streaks of light. The sound was like thunder compressed into a microsecond. The heat bloom was enough to make the nearest spectators flinch back even behind their protective barriers. Everything seemed to slow down in that moment. I could see the plasma bolts crossing the distance. I could see Elena's hand, still raised, still steady. I could see Kravik's triumphant expression. I could hear 46,000 beings collectively holding their breath. And then, Elena caught the plasma blast. Not deflected, not dodged it, caught it, with one hand. The twin plasma bolt struck her palm and simply stopped, the energy spreading across some kind of invisible barrier around her hand, dissipating like water hitting a force field, except there was no force field, there was just her hand, palm out, completely unharmed, not even singed. As Class 4 plasma energy evaporated harmlessly against her skin, the arena went silent, not quiet, not hushed, silent. 46,000 beings from 63 species. Every single one of them struck absolutely speechless. You could have heard a molecule drop. The energy shields hummed. The air circulation system wished. Someone's drink container hit the floor 3 sections away, and it sounded like a bomb going off. I had stopped commentating entirely. My mouth was open. My datapad had fallen from my hands. My translator was working overtime trying to find words in any language that could describe what I had just witnessed, and coming up completely empty. Kravik stood frozen, all 4 arms still extended, his plasma gauntlet smoking and depleted, his expression cycling through confusion, disbelief, fear, and finally settling on pure terror. Elena lowered her hand slowly. The palm was completely unmarked. She looked down at it, flexed her fingers once as if checking for damage, then looked back up at Kravik. When she spoke, her voice was quiet, but in that absolute silence everyone heard it clearly. "That was your best shot?" Stricklaw's 6 eyes were wide open, all focused on Elena. His mandibles were clicking rapidly, which was the Valdorian equivalent of profound shock. He did not call a foul. He did not stop the match. He just floated there, trying to process what he had seen. I finally found my voice, though it came out as barely a whisper into my microphone.
"What in the name of every ancestor and deity across the galaxy am I looking at?"
Nobody had an answer, but we were all about to find out. The silence lasted maybe 3 seconds before the arena absolutely erupted into chaos. Half the crowd was screaming that Elena had cheated somehow. The other half was screaming that what we had just witnessed was impossible. Several species-specific sections were arguing among themselves in languages my translator could not keep up with. Security teams were moving toward the barriers, unsure if they needed to intervene. The betting kiosks had frozen entirely, their algorithms unable to process what had just happened. Somewhere in the upper decks a Felixian fainted and had to be carried out by medical staff. Stricklaw, to his credit, maintained his composure. He raised one hand, and his amplified voice cut through the pandemonium like a blade. "Silence. Matches suspended pending equipment inspection." He floated down to Elena, his scanning equipment already active. Multiple beams of light passed over her body, checking for hidden technology, force field generators, energy shields. anything that could explain what had just happened. I watched on the monitors as the scans came back. No foreign technology detected. No energy signatures beyond normal biological functions. No illegal equipment. Nothing. Strict Law's mandibles clicked again. He ran the scan 3 more times using different frequencies, different detection methods. Same results. He checked her clothing, her boots, even made her open her mouth to check for concealed devices. Nothing. She was completely clean. The fighter is legal, Strict Law announced, and the crowd lost their minds all over again. Match continues. Elena rolled her shoulders and spoke, her voice still calm, still measured, like this was all a minor inconvenience. I should probably mention something. Earth is not a low-gravity world. Our gravity is actually about 1.8 times galactic standard. Also, our atmospheric pressure is higher and our planet is what you might call geologically aggressive. Lots of tectonic activity, frequent seismic events, extreme weather patterns. I am just saying this now, because I feel like maybe there was some miscommunication in the initial survey data. I was frantically pulling up files on my datapad, cross-referencing everything we had on Earth. How had we missed this? How had our entire intelligence apparatus failed this badly? And then I found it. The initial survey had been done during a solar flare event that interfered with the gravity sensors. The readings had been corrupted. And because humans had not made any fuss about it, because they had not corrected us, everyone had just assumed the initial classification was accurate. We had classified them as weak because we had measured their planet wrong and they had been too polite to correct us. I started laughing into my microphone. I could not help it. The sheer absurdity of it all. Kravik was not laughing. Kravik was experiencing what I can only describe as a complete psychological breakdown mixed with primal terror. His species were ambush predators by evolutionary origin. They understood fear. They understood when something was more dangerous than they were, and right now every instinct in his body was screaming at him that he was facing an apex predator from a world that made his own look like a vacation resort. But he was also the champion. He had a reputation. He had pride. And pride, as they say, comes before getting absolutely demolished in front of 46,000 witnesses. He roared and launched himself at Elena with everything he had left, all 4 arms swinging, teeth bared, bone plating reinforced with adrenaline-enhanced muscle tension. It was a berserk assault, no strategy, just pure violence born from desperation. Elena stopped dodging. She stepped forward, inside his reach, and threw her first punch of the match. It was not a wild swing. It was not a haymaker. It was a precise, controlled strike to Kravik's lower left ribcage. I heard the impact from the commentary booth. It sounded like someone hitting a bass drum with a sledgehammer. Kravik's entire body lurched sideways from the force. His bone plating, which had withstood kinetic hammers and plasma strikes, cracked. Actually cracked. I could see the fracture lines spreading across his torso. The crowd noise changed from chaos to something else entirely. Maybe. Horrified fascination. Elena hit him again. This time in the upper right shoulder. Another perfectly placed strike. Another crack. Kravik swung at her with 2 arms simultaneously. She blocked both with her forearms, and I swear I heard his wrist joints creak from the impact. She was not just stronger than him, she was so much stronger that it was not even a contest. My mind was racing, trying to do the math. If Earth's gravity was 1.8 times standard, and humans had evolved to function normally in that environment, then their bone density would be significantly higher. Their muscle fibers would be denser, their cardiovascular system would be more efficient. Coming to a station with standard gravity would be like removing weighted training gear. She was essentially operating at a fraction of her actual capability just by being here. Elena was not trying to hurt Kravik. She was teaching him a lesson. Every strike was controlled, calculated to cause pain and damage but not permanent injury. She could have ended this in one hit. She could have put her fist through his chest cavity if she wanted. Instead, she was systematically dismantling him, showing him exactly how outmatched he was. Kravik tried to grab her. She broke his grip by simply flexing her arms. He tried to tackle her. She stopped his momentum with one hand on his chest and pushed him backward so hard he slid 3 meters across the arena floor. He activated his backup plasma gauntlet, the one he kept for emergencies. She grabbed his wrist, squeezed until the gauntlet's casing cracked and yanked it off his arm before tossing it out of the arena. All around me, I could hear other commentators and analysts frantically researching Earth. Datapads were lighting up across the press section. People were pulling up geological surveys, atmospheric composition reports, biological assessments. The truth was spreading through the crowd like a virus. Earth was not a garden world. Earth was a nightmare planet where everything was heavier, denser, more violent than galactic standard. and humans had evolved to thrive there. I leaned back into my microphone, my voice a mix of amazement and sarcasm. So, just to recap for everyone at home, our galactic intelligence services, which are supposed to be the best in known space, somehow managed to completely misclassify an entire species because of a faulty sensor reading. We have spent 8 cycles assuming humans were weak, when in fact they are walking tanks from a high-gravity death world. This is fine. Everything is fine. I am sure this will not have any diplomatic ramifications whatsoever. The crowd was fully invested now. The boos had turned to cheers. People were chanting Elena's name, or at least trying to pronounce it correctly. The betting markets had crashed entirely, unable to calculate odds for a situation they had no reference for. Kravik made one final desperate move. He pulled out a neural disruptor which was definitely illegal, Class 7 contraband that could scramble brain function across multiple species. Strict Law saw it and immediately signaled a foul, but before he could intervene, Elena moved. She closed the distance in less than a second, caught Kravik's arm before he could activate the device and delivered a single precise uppercut to his jaw. The sound echoed through the arena like a gunshot. Kravik's eyes rolled back. His massive body went completely limp. He fell backward and hit the arena floor with a crash that shook the entire structure. He did not get up. He was breathing. His vital signs were stable according to the medical monitors, but he was absolutely, completely, thoroughly unconscious. Elena stood over him for a moment, breathing normally, not even sweating, looking down at the former champion with something that might have been pity. Strict Law floated over, checked Kravik's condition, then raised his voice amplifier. Winner by knockout, Captain Elena Vasquez. The arena exploded with noise. 46,000 beings cheering, screaming, trying to process what they had just witnessed. The medical team rushed in, needed 6 of them to lift Kravik onto the hover stretcher. Elena actually helped them, casually lifting one corner of the stretcher that 2 Drenathi medics were struggling with, and the look on their faces was priceless. I sat in my commentary booth watching it all unfold and started laughing again. The galaxy had just changed. We had made first contact with a species of apex predators from a world that would kill most of us in a matter of hours, and we had classified them as harmless. The diplomatic implications were staggering. The military implications were terrifying. The sports entertainment implications were extremely profitable. But mostly I was laughing because somewhere in the Galactic Intelligence headquarters, someone was having a very, very bad day. And honestly, they deserved it. Kravik was alive, which was honestly impressive considering the beating he had just taken. The medical team had him loaded onto the hover stretcher, monitors showing stable vitals but significant trauma to his skeletal structure, 3 cracked ribs, a fractured wrist, severe bruising across 60% of his body, and a concussion that would probably keep him unconscious for the next 6 hours. For a species as durable as the Thraxians, that kind of damage was remarkable. For Elena to have inflicted it while clearly holding back, that was terrifying. What happened next, though, really drove the point home about what we were dealing with. 2 Drenathi medics were struggling with one corner of the stretcher. Kravik weighed 430 kilograms, and even with the hover assist technology, maneuvering that much mass required effort. Elena noticed, walked over and casually lifted the entire corner they were struggling with, using one hand, while asking if they needed help getting him to the medical bay. The Drenathi just stared at her. One of them dropped his medical scanner. Elena smiled politely, adjusted her grip and helped them guide the stretcher through the arena exit like she was carrying a bag of groceries instead of a massive unconscious warrior. The arena was still processing what had happened. People were sitting in their seats talking in hushed tones, replaying the match on their personal devices, trying to figure out if they had actually seen what they thought they had seen. The answer was yes, but accepting that answer required fundamentally rethinking a lot of assumptions about the galaxy and humanity's place in it. I sat in my commentary booth watching the crowd, and felt my own understanding of galactic order shifting in real time. This was not just about a surprising tournament result. This was about realizing that we had made a catastrophic error in judgment, and that error had implications that would ripple through every level of galactic society. Think about it from a political perspective. For 8 cycles, Earth had been treated as a minor player. They had been given limited trading rights, restricted access to certain technologies, minimal representation in Galactic Council proceedings. Why? Because we thought they were weak. We thought they needed our protection, our guidance, our benevolent supervision. Turns out, they had been operating under restrictions, while being physically superior to pretty much every species they had encountered. They had been polite about it, diplomatic, patient, but that patience probably had limits. Earth was not some backwater low-gravity world that got lucky with technological development. Earth was a high-gravity crucible where everything was heavier, denser, more dangerous than galactic standard. Their gravity was 1.8 times what most spacefaring species considered normal. Their atmospheric pressure was higher. Their weather patterns were extreme. Their tectonic activity was constant. Their disease environment was so hostile that their immune systems had evolved to be hyper-aggressive. They had predators on their planet that could kill most galactic species with ease, and humans had become the dominant species in that environment. Let that sink in for a moment. Humans had climbed to the top of the food chain on a planet that would classify as a hazard zone for most of us. I needed to talk to Elena. The press section was already swarming with reporters, all trying to get an interview, all shouting questions in multiple languages. Elena emerged from the medical bay about 20 minutes later, still looking completely composed, and agreed to answer a few questions. I pushed my way to the front, using my commentator credentials shamelessly. "Captain Vasquez," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "That was the most impressive display of combat capability I have seen in 17 cycles of covering this sport. Can you tell us about your training background?" Elena looked slightly uncomfortable with the attention, but she answered clearly, "I appreciate the compliment, but honestly, I am not a combat specialist. I am a cargo pilot. I move freight containers between stations. The only fighting training I have is basic self-defense courses that all human spacers take before deployment. About 6 weeks of instruction, mostly focused on emergency situations." The press section went completely silent. "I am sorry," I said, because I needed to hear her say it again. "You are not a soldier. You are not special forces. You are a cargo pilot." "That is correct," Elena confirmed. "I hauled mining equipment for 3 years, then switched to agricultural supplies. This is actually my first time in a combat arena. I only entered the tournament because I was on shore leave and thought it might be interesting." My datapad slipped from my hands again. I was making a habit of that. "So," I said slowly, "if you are a baseline human with basic training, what would an actual human combat specialist be capable of?" Elena considered the question carefully. "Well, our military personnel train for years, not weeks. They have specialized genetic augmentation, enhanced equipment, tactical neural interfaces. I would estimate they are probably 3 to 4 times more effective than me in combat situations, maybe more depending on specialization." The implications hit me like a physical blow. If Elena, a cargo pilot with 6 weeks of self-defense training, could dismantle our reigning champion without breaking a sweat, what could an actual human soldier do? What could a human special operations team do? What could a human military fleet do if they ever decided diplomacy was not working out? The betting markets had given up entirely. Every board showed error messages. The odds calculators had no framework for processing this kind of upset, but already I could see new bets forming. How far would Elena go in the tournament? Would other humans enter? What would happen if Earth sent actual athletes instead of random pilots on shore leave? My communication pad lit up with priority alerts. 3 other major combat tournaments had already sent offers to any human fighters who wanted to compete. The prize pools had doubled overnight. Sponsorship deals were being written in real time. The economic impact alone was staggering. But that was nothing compared to the political earthquake happening above our heads. The Galactic Council had called an emergency session. I could see the priority transmission codes flashing across every official channel. Diplomatic ships were being dispatched to Earth immediately. Not the standard trade envoys, but actual council representatives with full negotiating authority. 8 cycles of treating humanity as a minor species had just been revealed as a potentially catastrophic diplomatic blunder, and now everyone was scrambling to fix it before Earth decided they were tired of being patient. I pulled up Earth's diplomatic history, reading through the files with new understanding. Every treaty they had signed had been weighted against them. Every trade agreement had favored the other party. Every time they had requested better terms or more representation, they had been politely denied, and they had just accepted it, quietly without making threats or demands. They had played by rules that were designed to keep them subordinate. Now everyone was realizing that humanity had not been accepting those terms because they were weak. They had been accepting those terms because they were patient, because they understood the long game, because they were smart enough to know that revealing their true capabilities too early would cause exactly the kind of panic we were seeing now. I made my way down to the arena floor one more time. Elena was preparing to leave, heading back to her ship, probably looking forward to a quiet drink and some rest. I caught up with her near the exit. "Captain Vasquez, one more question. What does Earth want from all this?" She stopped and turned to face me. Her expression was serious but not unfriendly. "Honestly, we want what everyone wants. Fair trade, equal representation, to be treated as partners, not pets. We have been waiting for the galaxy to figure out who we actually are, And now what happens next depends on whether everyone can move past their assumptions and work with us in good faith. We are happy to compete in your tournaments. We are happy to fight if we need to, but we would much rather cooperate. It was a simple statement delivered calmly without threats or ultimatums, but the weight behind it was enormous. This was not just one cargo pilot speaking. This was humanity's message to the galaxy. We are stronger than you thought. We are more capable than you assumed. We have been patient, but our patience is not infinite. So let us try this again, as equals this time. I watched her walk away, disappearing into the crowd of spectators who were still trying to get her autograph or just touch her like she was some kind of legend, which I suppose she had just become. I made my way back to the commentary booth for my closing remarks. The next matches were scheduled to start in an hour, but nobody was paying attention to them anymore. This tournament, this entire sport had just been redefined by a human cargo pilot who fought in her spare time. So, I said into my microphone, my voice heavy with sarcasm and something that might have been respect. Today we learned a valuable lesson about making assumptions. We learned that sensor malfunctions can have far-reaching consequences. We learned that politeness should not be mistaken for weakness. And we learned that humans, those quiet little bipeds from the Orion arm that we barely paid attention to, are actually terrifying apex predators from a world that would kill most of us before we even reached the surface. This is fine. Everything is fine. I am sure the next few cycles of galactic politics will be perfectly calm and not at all complicated by the fact that we have been accidentally insulting a species of super-strong deathworlders for almost a decade. The crowd was filtering out now, heading to bars and restaurants where they could process what they had witnessed. Tomorrow, the news feeds would be full of analysis and speculation. Diplomatic channels would be burning with urgent communications. Military strategists would be reassessing threat projections. Trade negotiators would be rewriting contracts. The galaxy had just changed. Not because of a war or a discovery or some cosmic event, because a human woman had decided to enter a fighting tournament on her day off, and had casually demonstrated that everything we thought we knew was wrong. I signed off, closed down my equipment, and sat in the darkness of the booth for a few minutes just thinking. Despite everything, despite the chaos and the panic and the scrambling, I felt oddly excited. The galaxy had been getting predictable, the same species dominating the same sectors, the same power structures playing the same games, and now, suddenly, there was a new player, a species we had underestimated so badly that the mistake itself was almost impressive. Humanity had arrived on the galactic stage, not with conquest or threats but by simply showing us who they actually were, and I had a feeling we were going to spend the next few decades figuring out what that meant. But hey, at least the tournaments were going to be a lot more interesting from now on.